Today, we're talking to Timothy. Timothy's the outreach coordinator at the Brain Injury Research Center at Mount Sinai. He's served as an executive board member of the New York State Traumatic Brain Injury Services Coordinating Council, a board member and former vice president of the Brain Injury Association of New York, and has received several Brain Injury Association of New York awards. In his longtime role at the Brain Injury Research Center, he helped establish a model of outreach, advocacy, and participatory action research. In the upcoming months, Timothy will be launching virtual support groups for individuals living with brain injury. Timothy, there's something else that makes you uniquely qualified for your current role here at the Brain Injury Research Center. What is that?
I'm actually a person living with a traumatic brain injury. Basically, I was in a car accident in 1994, and originally I was diagnosed with partial paralysis, so they weren't really paying attention to the brain injury aspect. And during my outpatient and inpatient therapy, they noticed that I had some deficits. And once they, ran all the tests and realized that I did have a TBI, they basically diagnosed me with a traumatic brain injury. And that opened all the doors for me to get help, therapies, etc.
So what led you to your current role as outreach coordinator at the Brain Injury Research Center at Mount Sinai?
Well, I actually was, I came to New York and I was just looking for some volunteer work, something to do in regards to brain injury to help others. And that gave me, being a brain injury survivor gave me a certain kind of insight into what it's like to live with this. And so I found a volunteer job at Mount Sinai because they had a grant that they had to have a certain number of people with TBIs volunteering there. And what I saw was a need for people with traumatic brain injuries, and from my personal experience, to talk to other people with brain injuries. When the doctors come in, they haven't had a brain injury, but they've learned about brain injury. But I was thinking, well, what about the perspective of a person with a brain injury talking to another person with a brain injury? And so I had spoken to my supervisors, etc. And when the grant ran out, they decided to keep me on in that capacity and asked me if I could develop that more, which I've done.
What's been the most rewarding part about working with individuals who have sustained a traumatic brain injury, their families, their caregivers?
The thing is, when I meet patients, they're in the hospital and they've recently suffered the TBI, and their families are very, they're kind of in shock. And when I walk in and say, this is who I am, this is what I do. Oh, and by the way, I'm a person living with a traumatic brain injury. Their whole attitude changes. Their eyes light up because I'm vertical instead of horizontal. I'm talking somewhat articulately. And so it gives them hope in regards to, that their loved one will get better. One of the other things is that over the years, and I've been at this for about 20 plus years, I'll see people on the street that, I don't remember, but they said, Mr. Timothy, I was in your support group at Mount Sinai for my traumatic brain injury. Thank you so much. And so giving the hope to the families and seeing people who I've, spoken to and run support groups with and who are now back in the community, who say thank you and remember me, that's what's rewarding to me.
Now, Timothy, as an advocate and somebody living with a traumatic brain injury, what do you wish more people understood about brain injury?
I wish they understood that a brain injury, in a lot of cases, you can't see it. And so I think people are programmed that when you have any type of debilitating injury, you can see the effects. Like if you break an arm, you get it set in a cast, then the cast comes off, then you do therapy, and then the arm's good. With brain injury, you can't see it. People say, oh, you look fine, you sound fine, you know, when in fact it's a struggle and it takes a lot of work to appear normal. And so people, if they don't see it and they don't see the repercussions of it, then they have a harder time realizing that you do have it. For example, I have a hard time processing information that, you know, what takes most people a split second to process and then respond takes me a few seconds, maybe a few minutes. You know, a lot of times people speak too fast and my brain can't keep up with what they're saying. And I have to ask them to repeat it and slow down. So that's the type of thing where, you know, people need to understand with a person with brain injury.
Why is it important to participate and contribute to brain injury research?
Well, research helps us understand and realize what's going on with people. I mean, the research involves speaking to people who have a brain injury and asking them particular questions about how they feel, their struggles, etc. I mean, back when I had my injury in 1994, not a lot of people were doing this kind of stuff. Over the years, I've noticed big changes in the field of TBI, and I have witnessed improvements in the care and treatments we can provide other patients. And research played a big part in that. It brings a lot of unknowns about TBI into the light. And the thing is, again, back when I had my injury, it wasn't on anybody's radar. I think the different wars where you had a lot of soldiers coming back with TBIs, that shed a lot of light. And people became more aware of it as a thing. And research helps us to define and to pinpoint not only how complicated brain injury is, but to develop programs to help people with TBI, different types of ways to compensate for the deficits. Because the thing with the TBI is it doesn't go away. It's there. It's going to be a long-term type of situation. So research helps us develop different coping mechanisms for that.
Timothy, what advice would you have for a loved one or caregiver supporting someone with a brain injury?
The key word here is support. What does that mean or look like? It means being patient, showing empathy, becoming an advocate for your loved one. I mean, that's so important. And remember, it didn't just happen to them, it happened to you. You just don't have the extreme issues that a person who had the TBI. But psychologically and mentally, it did happen to you. So you need to focus on your well-being and find your own support, whatever that may look like. For example, you can go to therapy, attend support groups for caregivers and loved ones, and develop a good support system through family and friends.
Timothy, how can people get involved in brain injury research?
Reach out to us here at Mount Sinai and the Brain Injury Research Center, because we're doing the research. And from a research standpoint, you know, that's important. But if you need help and things like that, and, you know, different advocacy situations, you can call the Brain Injury Association of New York State or the Brain Injury Association of America, because most states have a local brain injury association affiliate. So yeah, reach out, give us a call, and we can answer questions. I can answer questions. You know, we're available.